Tonight, a terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester on the Jewish community's holiest day.
2 people killed and 4 others seriously injured. Synagogues across the country now on high alert.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back!
The man responsible was shot dead by police after he rammed his car into worshippers and attacked them with a knife. Counter-terror police say they know his identity and have made 2 other arrests.
How are you going to make synagogues safer, Prime Minister?
The Prime Minister quickly returned from a leaders' summit in Denmark to chair an emergency meeting.
Tonight in Manchester, I hear from a community in shock after 7 minutes of terror.
I've never been frightened. I've been in shelters, sirens, army bases. I've never been scared.
There you go. Any you heard that?
And today I'm scared. This has happened, in my neighbourhood.
Only the bravery of security guards prevented the man from entering the building full of worshippers. Coming up, we hear from the officer leading the investigation, the Prime Minister, and those who witnessed the attack firsthand.
Good evening. In tonight's programme, we're going to focus on a terrorist attack on a synagogue full of worshippers in Manchester, which left 2 people dead and 4 others seriously injured. Shortly before 9:30 this morning, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, a man drove his car into a crowd, then jumped out and began attacking them with a knife. He was shot dead by police minutes later. He hasn't been named, but his actions have shocked and angered the Jewish community. Today, the Prime Minister authorised extra police protection at synagogues around the country and vowed to do everything in his power to guarantee their security. His government has been criticised by Israel's foreign minister for failing to curb what's described as a toxic wave of anti-Semitism. Coming up this hour, we'll discuss the global rise in anti-Semitic attacks and we'll hear from Jewish community leaders. But first, let's take you live to Manchester and speak to my colleague Sarah Jane.
Yalda, thank you. Well, the attack took place here at the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in Crumpsall on Yom Kippur, as you said, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, has our first report.
Armed police, their guns trained on the suspected attacker.
Get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with integrity! Everybody else! He has a bomb! Go away!
He's got a bomb on him! Bomb? Mate, he's got a...
They tried to get members of the public away.
Man, he's got a bomb on his jacket, mate. He's trying to go into school. Mate, he's stabbed him.
Got a gun!
No, he's got a bomb. Get out.
A victim of the attack lies on the floor.
Mate, if he detonates... Mate, I'm just jumping out of this in a minute. He's going to blow himself up. He's trying to press the button.
When the attacker ignored their instructions.
Like, shoot him!
These pictures show a knife and an item we believe was strapped to the attacker's body. In those first moments, the mere suspicion this was a terror attack prompted a response within minutes and of overwhelming scale. The fear there could be explosives. This image of the attacker, the face that those caught up in this would have seen. All of this at a synagogue on the holiest day of the year in the Jewish calendar. For those who call this community home, it is shattering.
Today, like I said, being an auspicious high holy day, with all fasted since 6:30 last night, you want to feel secure, you want to be able to go to places and feel that you can just walk around and do what you can do.
It's ridiculous, honestly. I don't know what goes through people's minds when they target innocent people. It's just, it doesn't sit right with me.
I've never been frightened. I've been in shelters, sirens, army bases, bombed at in First Gulf War, Second Gulf War, served in the army there. I've never been scared.
There you go. Any you heard that?
And today I'm scared. This has happened, in my neighbourhood.
That noise you hear as she's talking, to people already on edge, they speculated was the sound of a controlled explosion. Barely 100 metres from the scene, police sealed off another street. One neighbour here reported seeing people being detained. Police have confirmed 2 arrests.
This attack has been officially declared as a terrorist incident, and the investigation is now being led by counter-terrorist police. As has been confirmed by CT policing, we believe that the identity of the offender has been established, but until we are certain of this fact, it is premature to set out this detail at this juncture.
The Mayor of Greater Manchester came to visit the scene.
Tonight our first thoughts are with the families of those people who died, those injured and those traumatised by this and horrific anti-Semitic attack on our Jewish friends and neighbours. We condemn it outright.
Attacks like this are felt far beyond where they happen. The Prime Minister offering this message to the Jewish community.
On behalf of our country, I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears. Nobody should have to do that. Nobody. And so I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community.
Security at synagogues had already been increased. The fear of just this sort of attack was real. And here, in this community, it became reality. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
Well, let's just bring you an update now from counter-terrorism police. We are hearing that there are now 3 people in custody. 3 arrests have been made in connection with this morning's attack. And Greater Manchester Police have confirmed the name of the suspect shot dead by armed officers here at Heaton Park Synagogue. They say we are now able to confirm that although formal identification is yet to take place, we believe the person responsible for today's attack is 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami. He is a British citizen of Syrian descent. That's the latest we have from Greater Manchester Police. 3 people arrested in connection with this morning's terrorist incident. 3 people in custody, and they have named the suspect, the man you see on your screen there, 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent. More on that as we get it. Now, as you've been hearing, police treating this attack as a terror incident. They confirmed that pretty quickly. They confirmed it this afternoon. Officers now confirming the name and age of that attacker, and 3 people have been arrested. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt takes a look now at how events unfolded this morning.
The synagogue was full of worshippers on this, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The terrorist was prevented from getting inside, but by then he'd killed 2 and injured 4 others. This is how the horror unfolded. The first emergency call was made at 9:31. A man had been stabbed and a car driven towards people at Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in Crumpsall. 3 minutes later, firearms officers were sent to Middleton Road as police received more reports that a security guard had been attacked with a knife. When police arrived, there was a car close to the front gates of the synagogue with a victim on the road. At 9:38, outside the building, officers confronted the attacker before they opened fire and killed him. At 1 p.m, a police cordon was put up on White House Avenue, less than half a mile from the synagogue. Witnesses say 2 men were led away in handcuffs. Police will be delving into every aspect of the killer's life, his family, his friends, his acquaintances, and examining in minute detail any mobile phones and computers. They'll want to know everybody he's been in contact with. Did others help him plan the attack, or was he a lone wolf? Police said later they knew the killer's identity, but they weren't ready to reveal it publicly.
There were a large number of worshippers attending the synagogue at the time of this attack. But thanks to the immediate bravery of security staff and the worshippers inside, as well as the fast response of the police, the attacker was prevented from gaining access.
The Home Secretary met some of the officers involved in the response to the attack, and she had a message for terrorists.
To those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
As night fell, the police operation was widening beyond the city. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Manchester.
Well, this is a developing story. More information coming out from counter-terrorism police and Greater Manchester Police. Our Chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam is with me now because we've had a bit more information about those 3 arrests that have been made.
Yeah, an update from Greater Manchester Police tonight telling us that 3 people have been arrested. We thought it was 2, saying that 3 suspects currently in custody have been arrested on suspicion of the commission, preparation and instigation of acts of terrorism. There are 2 men in their 30s and a woman in her 60s. They say scenes remain in place at an address on White House Avenue in Crumpsall, which is about 100 metres down here, where we know some people were detained earlier today, and also address in Langley Crescent in Prestwich, which is a couple of miles away from here. That's new, we didn't know, and they say those addresses are linked to those arrests that they've made, and also confirmation, although there are of the suspect today. They believe that person, they say, to be responsible is 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent, confirming some of the other details we knew, that device they thought he was carrying was not viable, and they say that based on what they currently know, their records show there were no previous prevent referrals relating to this individual. Of course, that government counter-terrorism programme that we hear so much about. And then they go on to confirm the details of who lost their lives. So more detail from Greater Manchester Police. An investigation, they said earlier, that's been moving at pace in Greater Manchester and beyond, they said earlier today. It's clear a lot is happening and that investigation continues.
And Greg, you've been here all day talking to the community. Obviously, the terrorist incident happening just a few yards from where we're standing now, and arrests made a couple of streets from where we are now. What has been the reaction today?
You look at the faces of people today, and a lot of them were down here at this cordon because they were forced to leave the area. They lived nearby, and you could see that it was shell shock. They were people who, the speed of what happened, the scale of what happened, the fact they were forced from their homes, they heard those gunshots, the fear that there were explosives there, and that's why they were brought down here, to be away from that scene. The fact it was a holiday for the synagogue, and they know that synagogue, they live in this community, they know there were so many children in there. I think it was very, very difficult for them to comprehend. We talked earlier about a group of older people who sat on dining chairs that someone had put out on the street. They were here all day, just sitting there waiting for the opportunity either to go back into their homes or be taken somewhere else. And I think also gratitude from all of those people we spoke to. Firstly, the police response that was so fast and so effective, and the response of those inside the synagogue, the people in there who barricaded, people inside, the security team there, who undoubtedly saved lives with their actions. But I think a lot for this community to digest, even tonight.
OK, Greg, thank you. Greg Milam there, our Chief North of England correspondent. Well, police arrived here pretty swiftly at the synagogue within minutes of having been alerted by that first phone call from the public. Here and across the country, the Prime Minister has now authorised extra police protection, as our Home editor Jason Farrell reports.
A targeted attack on a community, almost certainly inspired by hatred, designed to provoke fear. It seemed inevitable this statement would come.
Counter-terrorism policing has declared this as a terrorist incident. And I want to be clear, UK policing is mobilising, and it's mobilising fast.
Police say there's no reason to suspect an increased threat to synagogues, but policing visibility will be stepped up. This from London's mayor.
I want to reassure them that in London they will be seeing additional police officers. People should be allowed to go about and practice their faith, knowing they're going to be safe. Unfortunately, too many Jewish Londoners, Jewish people across the country, Jewish people across the globe don't feel that way, and that's heartbreaking.
The Jewish community had feared this day would come and had already put measures in place to protect themselves, as the Prime Minister observed.
We provide a home. For so many Jewish families, that is the story of Britain. But Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. Today's horrific incident shows why. And while this is not a new hate, This is something Jews have always lived with. We must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again.
The Community Security Trust, which monitors anti-Semitism, found that after the October 7th attacks in Israel, anti-Jewish incidents doubled in the first half of 2024.
I don't want it to be normalised. It's completely abnormal and extreme for British Jews to have to lead this way. The security measures at schools, I mean, we design schools at the architecture stage to be as far back from main roads as possible in case, God forbid, there's ever a truck bomb. You know, that's the extent of what we do.
Our place there!
Ahmed Ali Alid was responsible for the last terrorist murder in the UK. In October 2023, the asylum seeker attacked a Christian housemate in Hartlepool, but said he was inspired by the war in Gaza. In October last year, the head of MI5 had this warning.
We are powerfully alive to the risk that events in the Middle East directly trigger terrorist action in the UK, as we saw with last October's knife attack in Hartlepool. The ripples from conflict in that region will not necessarily arrive at our shores in a straightforward fashion. They'll be filtered through the lens of online media and mixed with existing views and grievances in unpredictable ways.
Marauding attacks are unpredictable and quick. In 2017, the 3 London bridge attackers killed 6 people in 8 minutes before they were shot. The same year, the Westminster bridge attacker killed 5 people in 82 seconds. Here in Manchester, the attacker was shot within 7 minutes of a call from the public. That phone call probably saved lives. It's likely so did the security precautions that all synagogues routinely deploy. That fortressing of their lives, schools and places of worship must sadly be stepped up. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, I'm joined now by the Labour peer, Lord Levy, who was in a synagogue today when he first heard about the attack here in Manchester. Lord Levy, good of you to join us tonight. Thank you so much. Your reaction to what unfolded this morning?
Sarah Jane, thank you for having me on. I've been in synagogue from early this morning all day. Our head of security came in and indicated we were going into lockdown during the morning service and couldn't really understand why. And then they came in with an explanation as to what had happened in Manchester. I think both myself, the whole community was in shell shock when we heard about it. Came home after synagogue at about 8 this evening, broke my fast, and have been inundated with messages as to what has happened. Sarah Jane, today is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. For an attack like this to happen on one of our synagogues on a day like this is beyond horrendous. It is tragic. I think emotions are raw, nerves are raw, and the whole community is in shell shock. Our rabbi last night spoke about anti-Semitism. We all have been concerned about anti-Semitism. I head one of our largest Jewish charities and one of our largest Jewish schools, and there have been real concerns recently of further threats of anti-Semitism. But what happened today with 2 fellow members of the Jewish community being killed in cold blood on our Day of Atonement on Yom Kippur is really just something that at this moment is incomprehensible. I think every Jewish home around the whole country, and even perhaps around the world, Sarah Jane, are just talking about this, concerned about this, not quite understanding what is going on. We feel part of this community. I'm privileged to sit in the House of Lords. But at this moment in time, I just feel so sad, so concerned, and quite frankly, really disturbed that on our holiest day, a tragedy like this can happen.
Sadly, Lord Levy, you'll be yourself only too well aware that the threat to Jews in Britain is always there. And we've been hearing today on Sky News from members of the Jewish community who while observing Yom Kippur, felt that they had to speak out, to talk about what had happened. They said that they felt more under threat over the last 2 years since the events of October 7th. And there has been sentiment expressed today by the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister in a social media post and by a letter written by the Israeli President to the King a few days ago before this attack, expressing the fact that there is a feeling that anti-Semitism in the UK has been going unchecked by those with the power to check it. Is that fair comment?
Sarah Jane, my emotions at the moment are too raw to really comment on that. I've known the President of Israel probably for 40-odd years. I've known him very well. I've often prayed in the same synagogue as him. I also know the Foreign Secretary of Israel who made those comments. I think to, at this moment in time, come out with statements that can, quite frankly, be interpreted in different ways, I think is something we should avoid at this moment in time. I think emotions need to really be dealt with. I think the authorities in this country need to do what they have to do. His Majesty the King has come out with his statement of sympathy, as has the Prime Minister. When I got home and answered my phone or turned my phone on, because I not had it on all day being Yom Kippur, there were many messages from cabinet ministers and from friends in sympathy as to what has happened. I think statements that are being made at this moment in time need to be controlled, and we need just to get over this next few days, analyze the situation, and really look deeply into what is going on. I think statements, and particularly on social media, at this moment in time, Sarah Jane, are really not helpful to anybody. Let the families, and we feel deep sympathy for them, our sincerest condolences, let them get through the emotions of this period, a period of mourning for them. Those who are in hospital, pray to recover, and then look into this in depth and analysis. And I'm sure that is what the leadership in this country will do. And I think that is what we all need to do, Sarah Jane.
Well, Lord Levy, I really appreciate that sentiment, and I hope that you have had a chance to see, as you said, all those messages of solidarity that have come out, as well as the sentiments that you perhaps don't rightly say they are for another day, but many people of many different faiths from all over the world expressing solidarity with British Jews and the wider Jewish community tonight. Thank you so much for your time, Lord Levy. I really appreciate it.
Sarah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, as Lord Levy alluded to, they're members of the royal family who were amongst the first to express their shock after the attack this morning. King Charles saying, "My wife and I have been deeply shocked and saddened to learn of the horrific attack in Manchester, especially on such a significant day for the Jewish community. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected by this appalling incident, and we greatly appreciate the swift actions of the emergency services." The Prince and Princess of Wales said, "Our thoughts are with the victims and the families of the terrible attack at Heaton Park Synagogue. The fact that this tragedy occurred on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, makes it all the more shocking. We are thinking of the entire community as well as the emergency responders who attended this terrible incident." Well, this part of Manchester has a large Jewish population. Today we have heard from members of that community who say that they are scared to see this level of violence.
President Herzog was here in this country just a couple of weeks ago, and he met Jewish leaders and heard at first hand how much concern there was in the Jewish community about possible attacks on the community. And ever since the Hamas attacks, deadly attack, murdering over 1,000 Israelis in their homes 2 years ago now, anti-Semitism in this country has increased and increased. We have hate marches on our streets, children concerned in schools, students at university concerned, even people worried about going into hospital. And so a fear has been building up and anxiety has been building up. And I think many people thought something like this might happen at some point, but it's still horribly shocking and absolutely devastating for this to take place in Manchester today.
Yeah, what the President of Israel obviously heard from the communities here in the UK, the Jewish communities, was so bad that he felt he had to write to the King. And as I said, it was just a few days ago, the 29th of September. Here we find ourselves at the beginning of October at the scene of a horrific attack at a synagogue that you know well, Dame Louise.
I know this synagogue very well. I was brought up in this area. I attended Heaton Park Synagogue regularly as a child, and I was married there. So this is very familiar to me, very much home ground, and I feel very, very upset for many reasons.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you feel when you heard the news this morning?
I was horrified. Horrified this had happened at all, very upset it was here. But then I realised that I had been building up a concern, particularly over recent months, with what I feel is a development of hate towards Jewish people, almost a normalising of it. And I felt that this had now happened, horrendous, but should we really be surprised?
The Heaton Park Synagogue is a synagogue that I'm very, very close to. I had my bar mitzvah there. I had wedding there. My parents are members there, and when my mum passed away, we had prayers there. So I'm absolutely shocked and stunned at what has gone on today. It does appear as if, well, not appear, it is the case that anti-Semitism is growing, becoming much more aggressive, and Jews have become the target, I think, predominantly because, you know, most of us identify as Zionists, and somehow that has given us pariah status now. So we were very much aware that something might happen. It's quite a simple link. Most Jews identify as Zionists, which is self-determination for a Jewish state. It does not preclude self-determination for a Palestinian state, which I have sought to achieve for many years working with Palestinians. But I think what's happened is that Israel has been made a pariah state by the UK, and therefore most Jews who identify as Zionists or considered Zionists have become a target. So no, I don't think the government understand.
I know a lot of people who attend this synagogue. There are a lot of people who I interact with a lot in Manchester. As soon as it was clear that there was no ongoing terrorist threat, I came over, and I've been with the Jewish community volunteers who, in the midst of all the anguish and the horror, have been incredible heroes in being there. I don't just mean afterwards, and they're still around now on all the streets and will be all night, but actually in the immediate aftermath. You know, this young lad who put on the first tourniquet. Oh yeah, he said, well, that's it's my job, except he's a volunteer. It's not his job. He volunteered to do it, and that courage is the one big beacon of hope. I mean, I came in rather more than depressed, but you know, that's uplifting when you see how people are already and were fighting back.
This is very close to home for me. This is my synagogue where the attack happened, and I had my very close family members inside when the attack took place.
It must have been incredibly worrying not being able to get hold of them.
Well, it was, and I actually only know that they're okay because I saw them on Sky News on the live stream after the incident happened. Now, this is our worst fears coming true. We have thought that this day might come for some time, as we've been warning against the huge surge in anti-Semitic hate crime targeting Jewish people across the whole of society, whether that is in universities or schools or workplaces or even in the NHS. We have had to endure an appalling level of hatred due to people either being unwilling or unable to combat or stop a conflict taking place thousands of miles away being brought onto our streets. So make no mistake, when people go marching and talk about globalising the Intifada or hunting down Zionists in the street, this is what they mean. They mean two Jewish people from Greater Manchester who are British being murdered in cold blood on the holiest day of the year.
Well, big reactions and big emotions from this small, close-knit community in Manchester, a really diverse community and so many different faiths standing with the Jewish community tonight. As I said, it's a small community, but a terrorist incident happening here that will have big reverberations around the world. Yalda, I'll hand back to you for more reaction.
SJ, thank you so much for all of your reporting since this horrific incident and throughout the day. Well, reacting to events in Manchester today, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar accused British authorities of allowing anti-Semitism to persist by failing to take action to curb it. He said Israel expects more than just words from Keir Starmer and demanded a change of course from the Prime Minister. Let's just have a look. Writing on social media, he said the truth must be told. Blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israel incitement, as well as calls of support for terror, have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain and on its campuses. The authorities in Britain have failed to take the necessary action to curb this toxic wave of anti-Semitism and have effectively allowed it to persist. We expect more than words, from the Starmer government. We expect and demand a change of course, effective action and enforcement against the rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement in Britain. Well, in a statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel grieves with the Jewish community in the UK after the barbaric terror attack in Manchester. Our hearts are with the families of the murdered, and we pray for the swift recovery of the wounded. As I warned at the UN, weakness in the face of terrorism only brings more terrorism. Only strength and unity can defeat it. Well, let's go straight to our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, in Jerusalem. Adam, I just read there the response from the Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, direct words to the Starmer government, asking them to do more. Benjamin Netanyahu speaking there as well. And we know that the Israeli president had written to the king a letter that was revealed today.
Yeah, all of those things, I think, and more, add to the impression that Israel and many Israelis feel beleaguered by the spectre of anti-Semitism, and when they see it being played out so violently on the streets of Britain, it really does resonate here. I think there's a few factors that come into play here, Yalda. Number one, this happened on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. In fact, when this attack happened in Manchester, around me in Jerusalem, the city was almost silent because movement around, work, driving just simply isn't allowed on that day. That's why the reaction, the political reaction, didn't come until later when these politicians effectively came back to work. But when that reaction came, it was strident and in some ways uncompromising. You heard there Gideon Saar calling out the UK government, referring to the Prime Minister as merely Starmer. We've had similarly strong sentiments from people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, as you would expect, Bezalel Smotrich, and many pointing to the fact that this country was built, they say, because of the enormous wave of anti-Semitism that, of course, led to the Holocaust. And there are those who feel that this is re-emerging. That was the substance of the letter that Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president, wrote to King Charles, saying that Jews in many countries, and he names the UK, Australia and Canada, are fearful for their safety, and that these are countries that stood together, he said, to fight against fascism and Nazism, and are now seeing a rise in anti-Semitism. Now, there will be those who, of course, link this to global criticism of the state of Israel, the way it has conducted war in Gaza. But there will also be those who say it is completely different, that it is one thing to criticise, whether that is the government of Israel, whether that is the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu. It is quite another to watch anti-Semitism and not to jump in to stop it. And that, I suppose, is the question that faces the British government now. How do you stop a rise in anti-Semitism? Is it happening? Yes, it is. All of the statistics suggest that in Britain and Europe, anti-Semitism is on the rise. And that worries a lot of people here in Israel.
Adam, thank you so much. And just to the point that Adam was making there about the rise in anti-Semitism, the attack in Manchester today is the latest case in a wave of anti-Semitism that's risen around the world. The number of anti-Semitic incidents reported globally rose by more than 107% in 2024. Australia had the biggest increase, recording more than 2,000 incidents last year. That number had never exceeded 500 in any of the previous 3 years. In the UK, 3,500 incidents were reported, which is down on the year before, but more than twice as many when compared with 2022. The total number of incidents doesn't tell the full picture. When the size of the Jewish population is taken into account, the UK recorded 11 incidents per 1,000 Jewish residents last year, the second highest globally after Australia. Despite more than 9,000 incidents of anti-Semitism being recorded in the US last year, the rate of those incidents is much lower due to the size of the Jewish population. Well, I'm joined now by Gideon Falter, Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Thank you so much, Mr. Falter, for joining us here on the programme. So we just, did a graphic there about the rise in anti-Semitism. Some of these numbers and stats are deeply alarming. First of all, just your reaction to what we have seen today, the horrendous incident.
I mean, of course, it's a horrific tragedy, particularly for the families of the people who've been murdered. But today's attack has been made completely inevitable by the radicalization and Islamist extremism that have been allowed to spread by successive governments in this country, which have ignored every warning and done practically nothing to help the Jewish community. And now the blood of British Jews cries out from the ground. The blood of the people murdered in Manchester is on the hands of our politicians, of our police forces, regulators, some in the media, institutions who were supposed to do their best to spread the truth and protect our tolerant, decent country. And instead, they have poured fuel on the fire, or they have appeased radicals and extremists, and now we see the fruits of that.
Mr. Falter, just talk us through some of these stats, because we're sort of talking about the size of the Jewish population in this country versus that in the United States versus that in Australia, and what each of these communities are currently feeling.
It's very difficult to explain just from the statistics, but let me put it this way. We do polling every year that asks people about their attitudes towards Jews. This year, for the first time ever, we found that 21% of the British population has entrenched anti-Semitic views, as in they believe 4 or more hateful things about Jews. And that number rises to 40% of young people. And so when you look at this from the point of view of a Jew, we're used to going to synagogues surrounded by security. We're used to having to not release the locations of our community events just in case someone comes and tries to attack us. And it has felt like an inevitability that with mobs rampaging down our streets week after week, calling to globalize the Intifada, this was going to happen. And this is what globalizing the Intifada looks like. It looks like Jews dead in a pool of blood outside a synagogue. And to all of the people who've been walking our streets and saying that this is justice, that Intifada is what they want, they have blood on their hands. But moreover, to the police forces, which have failed to use their powers under the Public Order Act, even tonight, there are demonstrations going on in London and in Manchester calling for Intifada. They don't stop for a beat for the dead Jews on the pavements of Manchester. And the police have to use now their powers under the Public Order Act to ban these constant marches and protests. It's enough.
Mr. Falter, questions are being asked about, the rise in anti-Semitism over the course of the last few years, and also questions about how to deal with it. What are some of the recommendations and suggestions that you are making to the government and others?
We've been making these recommendations for a long time to the government and to successive governments, I should add. I can't say that the previous government was an awful lot better, but this government, aside from not doing anything and not exercising any of these recommendations, this government has just poured fuel on the fire with its foreign policy posturing at the same time as appeasement. And the recommendations are simple. The police ought to ban these protests, and they ought to arrest people on these protests who glorify terrorism. We already have the laws to enable them to do that. The Charity Commission oversees a huge number of mosques because those mosques are charities. We've seen extreme rhetoric from those mosques, from preachers there, incitement, and the Charity Commission has done an absolutely dismal and abjectly bad job of dealing with that. We've then got our national broadcaster, the BBC, which, aside from broadcasting the death chants from Glastonbury and sending money to the family of a Hamas terrorist, can't even call Hamas terrorists themselves. And so when our institutions are setting such a terrible example and pouring fuel on the fire and appeasing those who declare openly that they want an intifada on the streets of the UK, that is when you get the level of incitement and these statistics you're talking about, these anti-Semitic incidents. They've been ratcheting up at extremely fast levels. The Jewish community suffers hate crime at a rate far in excess of any other faith community on a per capita basis. And this is an inevitability. Dead Jews on the streets outside a synagogue on Yom Kippur, unfortunately, was bound to happen with our institutions failing to take any action to protect us.
Okay, Mr. Gideon Folter, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm joined now by the Israeli writer and historian Fania Oz-Salzberger. Thank you very much, Ms. Oz-Salzberger, for joining us here on the programme. Just your reaction to this terrorist incident that's taken place in the UK this evening.
Yes, well, good evening, sad evening from downtown Tel Aviv. First of all, I want to send my condolences. More than that, my heart goes out to the bereaved families and to the injured and to the Jewish community of Manchester and of the UK, but also to every non-Jewish, freedom-loving Democrat in your country, whatever their religion or creed may be, because these shootings have been against you all in this respect. It feels very dismal here. And we as Israelis also feel a sense of empathy and even sort of an apologetic view when we look at Jewish communities abroad. You've just shown us the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom. I'm so sorry they have to go through all this, no matter what their view is on Israel and Palestine.
Yes, I mean, many of these communities, and certainly the one here in the UK, are saying that for them, it wasn't a matter of if an incident like this was going to happen, but rather when, given the rise in anti-Semitism that they have been feeling and seeing.
Yes, I know what they feel because I've lived under terror threat most of my life. And I feel very sad that the idea behind founding the state of Israel was originally that Jews need not fear anymore, certainly not in their own country, but not in other countries either. And this hope of Zionism, of the young state of Israel, has so far failed dismally, I'm afraid.
We have seen members of Israel's government, the coalition government and the cabinet, link the rise in anti-Semitism to what is actually happening in Gaza, and you've alluded to that. Do you believe that these incidents are happening, this rise in anti-Semitism, that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years, is directly linked with what is happening on the ground?
Linked is a very complex term. I would never want anyone to say that there is some causal relationship between what's going on in Gaza and what has happened since the 7th of October and the rise of anti-Semitic incidents. I think unfortunately, a lot of Jew hatred was just lying there underground, waiting to erupt. However, I must say, and I feel so very strongly, and I think quite a few Israelis do too, I am not in the business of blaming Prime Minister Keir Starmer for having recognized a Palestinian state the other day. Because as long as that is done in the context of the two-state solution, then it is a perfectly Zionist idea to have two independent states, one for the Jews, one for the Palestinians. Not a bad thing in my mind and in the mind of a significant minority of Israelis today. However, any forgiving attitude that your government and your police have lent to street-level anti-Semitic crimes over the last 2 years is abhorrent and dangerous. And I'm talking about the marches with such slogans as not river to sea, because this can be explained in peaceful terms, but certainly globalized intifada is kill Jews everywhere. This is a translation, no other that I know. And of course, defacing posters of hostages, including children held hostage in Gaza, and vandalizing memorials for the dead of the 7th of October. It all feels like someone in Britain, maybe an absent-minded minister, maybe a forgetful judge, is no longer on guard for this particular citizenry of the United Kingdom.
Well, we'll have to, unfortunately, leave it there. Fania Oz-Salzberger, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Let's hope for better times. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, events this morning happened in a multicultural part of Manchester and one of the most religiously diverse neighbourhoods in the country. The attack has been widely condemned by communities of all beliefs. Let's speak now to Laura Marks, founder of Nisa Nashim, a Jewish Muslim women's network. Thank you very much, Laura, for joining us here on the programme. First of all, just give me a sense. We've been speaking to community leaders and rabbis and members of the community throughout the day and this evening, but just how, from the people you've spoken to, how have the community felt today and this evening?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And I'm actually at a friend's house because it was Yom Kippur. It's the holiest day of the year. And traditionally, at the end of a 25-hour fast, we all go and have a lovely meal and we celebrate together and sit around with friends and family. So I think we have to see it in the context of a very big, special day in the Jewish community. It's a day that we repent for our sins, but it's also quite a celebratory day. It's a very sort of special day. So today was, we started hearing news coming through mid-morning. And I think it's useful to know that when you go into a synagogue, and well, certainly when I go into a synagogue, well, almost all synagogues in this country, then you go through security. So there's a way in which you go into synagogue, which is all synagogues have security. And I think that we have become used to that. That's what we do. We go into synagogue and we go through security. But that's not normal. You know, that's not right. So, and this year, and particularly since 2 years ago, October the 7th, which was also a major Jewish festival, we go in not only with normal security, but with heightened security. So the community was already feeling very fragile, very vulnerable, very afraid that something like this could happen. And then mid-morning, we started to get reports that it had. So here we are on one of the most important Jewish days of the year, which has been hijacked in a funny way by horrific events. We're hearing about these people in Manchester. I mean, I have friends in Manchester. It's a very small Jewish community that we're part of, so everybody knows everybody. And I have friends in Manchester, immediately message them, are you okay? It's a small community, and I think it has been rocked to its core.
You talked there about the kind of security going into synagogues and Jewish community centres, and we've all seen it. It's airport-style security. Do you think that level of security will now be further heightened following this attack?
Well, I'm not a security expert. There are many security experts out there. All I can say is I wish we didn't live in a world where it was necessary. The details of it are not my bag, but it is very, very tragic. It's very frightening. It's very not British that we live in a society where this is necessary.
Laura, you run an interfaith network. You try and bring people of all faiths together. Primarily, you're working with, both Jewish women, Muslim women. How important is it that in this moment, there is societal cohesion?
Well, let me tell you something positive, because I don't think there's been much positive news today. But from the moment I started to hear about it, I was in synagogue, I wasn't on my phone, but I was aware of messages pouring in. I've had dozens of messages from my friends, from my colleagues, particularly from non-Jewish colleagues and friends who have been reaching out saying, I hope you're all right. This is horrific. This shouldn't be happening. We're standing together with you. We're in solidarity. And as you say, Nisa Nashim, it means women in Arabic and Hebrew. And we set it up with that name to emphasize the similarities between us. And both communities are feeling vulnerable. Both communities are feeling threatened. And to come together in a world which is so polarized. Today, the pain of the Jewish community was palpable. But we're not the only community that is feeling vulnerable. And the more we can reach out to each other and stand together, what's the enemy here? The enemy here is extremism, is people with extreme views who do not want us to lead a safe British life where we bring up our children, we meet our friends, we go out on the streets, we're safe and we lead normal democratic lives. There are forces out there who do not want that to happen and will do anything, as we saw today, anything to drive us all apart and to make us fearful and hated and feel hated and to feel afraid and alone. And what I learned from so many friends reaching out to me today was we're not alone. We may feel alone. We may feel, particularly today, absolutely terrified, but we're not alone. And if I have one message to put out there, it's reach out to people. Most people are not extremists. Most people are good British parents, friends, children. We're all in it together. We want a community which feels safe.
Really wise words there. Laura Marks, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go straight to SJ, who joins us live again from Manchester. SJ, just speaking to people, there is so much emotion, there is so much pain, but just quite a positive note in this tragedy that I ended that conversation with about people coming together in this moment of darkness.
Yeah, very much so, Yalda. And of course, this terrorist incident happening on Yom Kippur means that for many Jews in the UK, they will have only found out about this attack just a few hours ago. So it's very emotional. People are still processing what has happened here. Like I said, some people have only found out this evening. But talking to people here, I spoke to two friends, Furkan and Mark, two community leaders here, one Jewish, one Muslim, and they wanted to come and appear on camera here together. You saw some of the interview a little earlier in the show to say that, this isn't about dividing people. This only brings people together, those who are of the right mind, who want to do good. And they were saying that, in this small corner of Manchester, the Jewish community, the Muslim community, Hindus, Christians, all live side by side in this very small space. They're literally neighbours, just walls separating them. And their message was very much that, we don't know the motive behind this attack. It was a clear attack on British Jews. But that the message going forward is that they want people to stand with the Jewish community, whatever faith or religion you follow, that is what they want to come out of such an awful incident today.
Yeah, Yeah, and SJ, as we said, the Prime Minister holding an emergency meeting today. We'll have to wait and see what comes out from that meeting in terms of measures that the government needs to take to protect all communities, which is what many of these community leaders say they have been asking for and calling for not just the Jewish community, but all communities that feel under threat.
Yeah, with respect to the Community Security Trust here on Sky News this evening, the CST, we've heard a lot about them today, and as soon as, of course, Yom Kippur, the sun went down, the CEO of that organisation came on to talk to us about the security that the Jewish community live under. They live under lockdown in schools. You were hearing it there from your last guest, and when they come to the synagogue, there is heightened security. This is just this part and parcel of everyday life for the Jewish community. And the Prime Minister saying that security will be stepped up, more police presence on the street in Jewish communities across the UK, trying to allay some of those fears. But what will happen going forward remains to be seen. The police investigation continues. And of course, we will find out what happens in the coming days as people come to terms with what's happened, Yalda.
SJ, really grateful for all of your reporting out there this evening and throughout the day. Thanks so much. Well, that's it from me and the team here in the studio and, of course, out in the field as well. The World will be back on Monday. The news at 10 with SJ in Manchester and Gillian in London is up next. Good night for now.